Big news at 10 tonight. A Siouxland doctor is reacting to comments President Donald Trump made Monday about expectant mothers using Tylenol. Backed by his health team, the president announced the U.S. Food and Drug Administration will notify physicians that the use of acetaminophen during pregnancy can be linked to an increased risk of autism. KTIV's Kaylee Doms with more tonight from Siouxland OBGYN.
Tylenol has historically been considered very, very safe in pregnancy, and it's something that we commonly use for fevers, headaches, pain in pregnancy.
On Monday, President Trump made an announcement from the Oval Office about autism.
Don't take it. Don't take it.
President Donald Trump strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy.
The use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol during pregnancy, can be associated with a very increased risk of autism.
Health experts are now pushing back nationwide, including here in Siouxland. Dr. Chandler Kasuski from Siouxland OBGYN says they have seen an increase of concerned expecting mothers reaching out to see if there is any validity in Trump's claims.
It's important to trust the science.
She says this is not a new topic, and there are decades of research showing no causal link to acetaminophen use and autism risk in children. And Siouxland OBGYN will still recommend that necessary patients take acetaminophen.
Our response is absolutely, especially because we know that there are things that Tylenol treats during pregnancy that if they go untreated, that can have detrimental effects on the fetus and the baby.
Dr. Kasuski says the medical community still firmly believes this is a safe medicine and wants to remind Siouxland.
Remember that your physicians have dedicated their lives to protecting you and your baby, and we do not have any intention of putting any harm anyway.
In Sioux City, with Chief Videographer Acacia Killian, Kaylee Doms, KTIV News 4.
Health experts from Siouxland OBGYN say if you ever have any concerns about medication or treatment, you should make an appointment and speak with your local doctor.